Hello, this is Darren Pulsipher, Chief Solution Architect of Public Sector at Intel, and welcome to Embracing Digital Transformation, where we investigate effective change leveraging people, process, and technology. On today's episode, leveraging AI to help protect our children with returning special guest Rachel Driekosen. Rachel, welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks, Darren. So glad to be back.
Hey, Rachel, you and I have been working together for 4 years now?
4 years.
4 years. Yeah, it's been wonderful. And we got to work on a couple of projects together, but one that really is dear to our hearts. It's around protecting children online and protecting children against child predators. So both dear to our heart. We've done a lot of work in this case, and then you've recently written a paper on the state of things in this. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah, awesome. Very excited to share some updates there.
So Rachel, before we get started with that deep topic, right? Tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your background. It's been a while since you've been on the show. It's been a couple years. Yeah. People want to hear a little more about what you've been doing and how you got to where you're at.
Oh boy, I don't know if people actually want to hear it, but I'll tell you anyway since you asked. So I'm currently a technical director for our state, local, and education practice here at Intel in the sales and marketing group, and the charter there is to explore options for scaling with our partners, some new and innovative solutions alongside movements in the policy and regulatory area. So we're acting not just as a technical instrument, but also as a bellwether for things to come and helping our procurement agents as well as our strategists in state, local, and education think a little more future-proof as they're selecting architectures and options for their digital infrastructure.
Well, you had an interesting way of coming to public sector. You did not start in public sector at all. In fact, being from Michigan, where would you guess you would have started? Of course, automobiles, right?
Yeah, that's where I got started. I was born and raised in Michigan and did a brief jaunt down to Texas, and it was too hot, so I came back specifically to work on auto, and I did automotive, embedded automotive sales, both OEM and tier one and aftermarket stuff, and just putting those black squares on the green board and making sure that, hey, we're doing really cool stuff with the latest and greatest at the capacitors, power management, and then I slowly crept into Intel because I wanted to work on memory and storage for autonomous vehicles. And that's how I started to get interested in the policy piece of technology. And some fine gentleman in California released something called autopilot, called it full self-driving, and people started dying because they didn't realize they still had to keep their hands on 10 and 2. I'm like, so who's responsible?
And be awake as well.
Yeah, you have to stay awake while you're driving your car. So yeah, who's responsible when an autonomous vehicle crashes, and what safeguards should be in place, and how do we make sure that the correct policies are structured so that they don't stifle innovation, but they're actually keeping people safer, and we're demonstrably using tech in a thoughtful way. So that's how I got started thinking about the impact of regulation and policy. And I got super lucky that this role on the public sector team came up. And 4 years ago I came over, 5 years ago I came over, and ever since I've been having a blast.
Well, and you've taken this whole idea of how policy can influence technology to the next level because you went back to school.
Yes, exactly. I am currently pursuing my Master's of Science in Law at Northwestern, and this program, I cannot say enough geek good things about it because it is I mean, the tagline is the intersection of business, technology, and law, and that is might as well be on my resume. Like, that's what I want to work on. So it's a they have a couple of different options. You can do it in person, you can do it part time, online, hybrid, and I have chosen to go the part time online route. And I just pick from this just gorgeous menu of classes. Biometric privacy policy, which I just got through, responsible data and artificial intelligence that I took in January. Visual communication. It's an excellent program. It's really allowing me to peak my, quench my thirst for all these different areas that might be applicable to our future.
Well, what I find interesting is you've used that passion that you have for policy and technology to tackle a really tough problem that we're talking about today, and that is the prosecution, and not just prosecution, but also discovery and prosecution of child predators, online child predators.
Absolutely.
And surprisingly, when you brought me into this, I was shocked at how disorganized the industry. You can't really call it an industry. It's just the jurisdictions in our government worldwide are completely discombobulated when it comes to technology and online crimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when when I brought you into this particular project, that was end of 21, so about 2 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
And I was not sure what the actual Intel play might be at the time, but the I mean that's the most important part in my mind is technology companies leaning in alongside law enforcement to not just come up with the technical solution, but come up with the language around the uniform language across different states and different municipalities that on a national level, on a global scale, so that this is so that the actual prosecution is and the investigation is not stymied because of a technicality in the language.
That's what I found most interesting. The technology to do some of the things that they needed, like chain of custody of evidence, for example, managing evidence, digital evidence. I thought, oh, surely the technology is simple.
Yeah, why haven't we done this
Simple.
already?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it turns out that the technology is there, but the understanding on how to use that technology differs in every single jurisdiction, even in the same
Oh
state.
yeah,
And I was like blown away.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I, yeah, something I did not understand at all.
I think that was pretty mind blowing for me too. That depending on which state you're in, the evidence handling requirements may be dictated by one house,
One judge.
one party here, and got to be careful what language I use when I'm talking about like law enforcement and regulatory stuff. House has one meaning, but depending on where you're at, the meaning of the same word can be entirely different, and it can be the difference between, oh, slap on the wrist and don't do that again, and 10 years in jail. Same word, different meaning. So it's really important to, as you're trying to solve problems in this arena, that the language and that awareness is a part of the campaign.
So I love how you brought awareness in there. I think awareness is probably one of the things we overlook the most when we're trying to deploy new technologies or new solutions into a space that we haven't done before. So how do you go about doing that when you've got something like, and I don't know if this is an industry jurisdiction, evidence management. Is that an industry?
Say more about that.
Well, I'm just wondering because when we tackled this problem, we were tackling the problem of how do I handle evidence of child pornography? Um, how do I handle that evidence? Because it's illegal to look at child
Oh
pornography.
yeah,
It's illegal to transport it. There's lots of rules around it, thank
yes,
goodness. But how do I handle this evidence that's digital evidence? How do I make sure it's not tampered with? How do I make sure that um, the victims are not
yeah,
re-victimized by it getting loose? There's all these problems that arise, but how do I teach awareness to law enforcement and to the judicial part of our governments? What is available out there today that will protect? That to me was the hardest part, was the awareness part.
yeah,
So how do we go about doing that broadly? Because like you said, depending on a judge can make these
yeah,
determinations.
exactly, exactly.
Um,
I mean,
so it's very hard.
it is very hard, and I, I don't have a solution for that yet. I have lots of speculation, and the research I've done so far has indicated that there's really not an easy way to build that awareness. Where there's still, I mean, there's still challenges around differences in judicial philosophy that would say, hey, we're going to look at how the original language was structured, and we're going to ignore anything that we're trying to be fed right now. So unless we've got active interest from that judicial system, unless we've got active interest from the prosecutor's office and unless they've got to have that willingness and interest to solve the problem, and they've also got to have the bandwidth and the resources to address the problem, which is something that I go into a little bit in the paper that I wrote that we're referencing today. We've got in my statistic of, hey, in 1998, when the cyber tip line was set up by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, uh, they said, hey, please, if you are seeing in any incidences of child pornography, report it here. And in 1998, they received north of 4,500 reports. And as technology evolved and advanced, as people became more aware of that reporting line, and as uh, the perpetrators of that illicit material also got smarter and were able to move faster because they weren't encumbered by red tape, that number ballooned to 32 million in 2022. I mean, there's and how many?
So you think that's due to the ease or the awareness that people have. I can report something, and also the bad guys are generating more of
Yeah,
this.
yeah. I mean, there's I and I'd pull up the statistic too, because it's not like it's there's a lot of repeat content, right? That's repurposed, and uh, that's where AI tools are in use right now. I mean, that's part of why it's 32 million, because these AI tools that are deployed by AWS or Facebook or whomever else, or Google or whomever else, they're on public platforms. They've got the ability to automate that scanning of some of this content. No, so they're able to automate those reports to some extent. But once you hit the folks that need to validate, the folks on the law enforcement side that need to validate it and say, oh yes, this is what I thought. This is child pornography. This is an illicit image of a minor. That is not, just mom taking a picture of her toddler in the bathtub, or consensual sex among adults. The that is perfectly. I don't want to see it, but it's perfectly legal. Like, once it hits the people that need to
Right.
validate it, those tools are not, one, technically not mature enough to handle that task. There's got to be a human in the loop, and that that job is traumatizing. you know? So,
Yeah. Do you think we'll get to the point where AI will be able to do that more readily and react faster? Because once something's up there and been reported, it could be weeks or months before any investigation's done,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
So that site could have been taken down or moved on. I mean, the list goes on and on,
Oh,
right?
yeah. I mean,
So
for sure. Keep going. Sorry.
no, no, no. So I'm just guessing. I mean, are the AI tools are they getting closer now where they can turn things around faster without a human in the loop? Or can we train the AIs to do a better job?
Two parts. I have a two-part answer for that. One, I don't ever want
Okay.
I don't ever want no human in the loop when it comes to making a decision about whether or not a person goes to jail or not. I think that that's going to continue to be.
Oh, thank you for saying that out loud, Rachel.
It's it's that's way too scary, and that's not appropriate. Like we need whether or not the tool is flawless, perfect, whatever. We having a human in the loop to be accountable for somebody's livelihood, whether or not someone goes to jail. I mean, that's got to be a piece. So that the question is not can the AI take over, but like how much faster can the AI make it for us? Um, how much how much can the AI protect the analyst who's got to go through and look at this stuff and verify how harmful it is? You know, how much can that AI actually say, okay, that looks just like that other thing, so I'm going to blur it and indicate that all right, that's pretty similar to this, or hey, we've definitely already this is the same fingerprint as one we've already
It's
seen.
the same
Yeah,
image,
so we'll
right?
just
Right.
yeah. But how much can we prevent that re-victimization of those children? How much can we speed through that process and then reduce the trauma incurred on the extremely brave people that are investing their I mean that are also being vicariously traumatized by going through this kind of
Right.
material.
So it just crossed my mind at the same time that we can improve these tools, right? That can do a better job at classification. Are we going to start seeing um, generated
Oh
images?
yeah. Yeah.
And is there any law? Have you read any policies or laws around? Well, it's not a real person, so it doesn't.
Yeah,
It's not child
that's an
pornography
interesting
now.
question. I saw something in Louisiana, out of Louisiana earlier this year that was along those lines. Hey, if it's an image of a child, it's still a child. Um,
Okay.
but I think that one's still to be determined because it's if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. If someone creates child pornography that is not actually a real person, is there any harm? I refuse to comment on that because that's just disgusting.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, um, but you can see where AI is now can be used for good and bad
Absolutely.
in both of these cases. So that's something that we have to do. We legislate that? Do we regulate that? Do we educate? Um,
Well, I think that I think there's a couple of things to look at because you can legislate you can legislate in one spot. You could legislate federally and to try to accomplish prevention of harm, and then everybody here says, "Oh well, we'll just move our stuff to Russia because um, CSAM, child sexual assault material or abuse material, CSAM's decriminalized in Russia. So let's just move them to those servers." So unless there's a uniform agreement, and I don't know that we ever get a uniform global agreement on that language of what is permissible and what is not permissible. I think we're gonna be hamstrung for a long time. But we
Is there any movement in getting a global policy or global
Yeah,
laws
yeah, there
around
is.
this?
So this organization, In Hope, that um, that I became aware of via one of the partners that we're working with for our project. They just launched a universal classification schema for categorizing different images, and the hope is that that gets fed to the intent is that that gets fed into artificially intelligent models so that they can assist along this investigative path. And that is, I think they're headquartered out of the Netherlands, which used to have like the largest concentration of child pornography, being hosted, not on purpose, but just because of the language, the language in the laws. Now it's different. So between the organization in the Netherlands, the U.S. is a founding partner of this organization. Um, there's absolutely a global effort. There's to and I forget, there's 100 plus countries that have analysts tied directly to InHope, and that's capital I, capital N, Hope, HOPE. There's more than 100 countries that are involved in this, trying to conquer this problem. Because again,
All right, so that's some
yeah, it's
great
really
news,
exciting.
right? And the technology, like you said, because AI is so much more advanced now, I can pass in these normalized classifications, which will be
Yeah,
changing, but I can pass those into AI models so that majority of the work can be done by the AI
hopefully,
models.
yeah. The majority of that work
And
can be done. It can be classified, identified, and then even in some cases, so if the language will allow, can like triangulate locations, based on repeat images and associate with known perpetrators. Uh, there's the possibilities for what can be done, because right now it's just like trying to shovel the sidewalk while it's a blizzard. So the possibilities of what can be done when we take full advantage of these tools, it's like being able to finally like take a breath and clear that sidewalk a little bit so people can walk.
are you starting to see organizations like Interpol, FBI, DOJ starting to work together, technology wise, to because these child pornographers, they're spanning the globe, right? And like you said, they're just going to move to another server or whatever. Are we starting to see these global police organizations work together and collaborate and share technology to help catch these perpetrators?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely seeing the interest, the head nodding, the ambition to do it. Still faced with the challenge of lots of ingrained, um, everybody acknowledges it's a big problem. Everybody, Interpol, all these organizations are trying to like work together, band together to get something done. Uh, so that's definitely happening. That's exciting. There's just a lot of hurdles around who's on first, who gets to dictate what the definitions actually are, and who's going to pay for it. Um, because
Yeah.
after all, I don't want my tax dollars being spent on something that we're not sure is going to work. There's certainly politics around defunding the police, which is heartbreaking, especially for issues like what we're talking about. I mean, yeah, they're putting their heads together to come up with a solution, but who is going to execute? Who's going to pay for that execution? That really concerns me.
That's, yeah. So let's talk about technical
Sure.
barriers. Are there any technical barriers that you're seeing with these organizations working together and coordinating
Ooh.
together? Or is it all political or policy and process problems?
Well, so I mean, a lot of them are political and process problems. And if you'll permit me to give one more example of that before I go into the technical,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Apple had launched or had announced that they were going to detect anything that was on iCloud. It was like 18 months ago. They said they were going to do CSAM detection in iCloud, and 18 months later, they're like, never mind, we're not doing this because um, the technology's not quite there. And this is, or excuse me, the technology is close enough that we could potentially detect and flag things. But after a couple incidences of people having their accounts flagged for pictures they were taking to send to their doctor, for example, their 3-year-old son having a rash in his groin, um, the public outcry was like, "Stop! I can't lose my entire digital life. You can't lock down my accounts because there was a false or a false positive." So I guess that's both I guess that is a technology issue. That technology actually has to be
Yeah,
close.
that's a
Yeah.
technology issue then.
Um,
But it's hard for an AI to discover
yeah.
intent,
Yeah. And
right? So there's still some limitations on the technology side, it sounds like, on
on
detection.
detection. Yeah.
Um,
Classification is certainly
but what
easier,
about
but
well, yeah. Oh, okay. And so what about on the prosecution side, um, the big hang up that we ran into was not a technical one, but it was a education of politicians and judges on what's capable for protecting evidence.
yeah, that's another really good
Um,
point. I mean, when we think about when we think about the when we think about the evidence handling specifically, the the known process of physically hand carrying this stuff that nobody this CSAM that nobody is supposed to handle. It's a felony to do so. Um, and you think about hand carrying a hard drive or a mobile phone that you suspect has this evidence, and there's only 4 people in the state that are qualified to analyze it. Not only are they those, not only is it them being qualified to analyze it, but also they're the ones that have the equipment to deal with it. So
right.
so that system, though it is slow, is what has been known. The software that manages those case files, and after that, the image of that hard drive is extracted, that software's been in place as a standard for a long time. And it's again the way that an officer processes their case, the way that the forensic analyst processes their case, the language they use, how they tag things, how they're putting their notes in. That's not necessarily uniform. It's not like you and I get into a spreadsheet and we click a button and we say red, blue, green, and those are the only 3 options. It's free text, and it's the same problem that when we talk about health electronic medical records. How do we define uniform thresholds so we can share information across boundaries here?
Yeah, that's what I found most interesting was that the sharing of information across boundaries was
Zero,
zero.
zero, because there's
0. So if I have a serial perpetrator that's crossing multiple jurisdictions, I have no idea,
yeah, there's no way to correlate
right?
that data safely. I mean, because it's, and to your point, but what we've been working on has been much more specific to the securing that evidence handling. The way that it's handled today, because you're not supposed to share, because we can't just like send you, here's your email, here's your attachment. No, instantly to jail.
Oh,
Do
you
not
can't
pass
do that.
go.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, no, how do we get through? How does law enforcement get through those hoops, so to speak, in a way that they can guarantee to the judge, hey, this was handled properly according to the rules that have been set forth for the handling of our most sensitive types of evidence. I mean, those laws were not designed for the evidence handling was designed for the handling of physical evidence. And we're seeing stuff evolve
Not for
to handle
digital.
the digital stuff, but how do you teach somebody with no technical background what's more secure from a cyber standpoint? How? What do we
Yeah.
do?
Do you think, I mean, eventually this will change.
Oh
It
yeah,
has to, as judges and lawmakers become more educated on the capabilities. But we, as technologists, we need to push harder. From my perspective, we need to be actively out there educating, actively out there helping our judicial system worldwide understand the art of the possible, and that we can protect people and data at the same time.
I agree. That's part of
So
why I get so geeked about the program I'm in, is to serve in a translational role where, I've got,
yeah, you're in a really critical
I'm
role.
hoping so. Being able to have this conversation, being able to speak the language of both sides of the fence, or multiple sides of the party, to serve as a negotiator and mediator as we figure out what makes sense. And it takes a long time to reach consensus on stuff, especially if you're speaking German and I'm speaking Mandarin. Like, we've got to find common.
Yeah, I can't even
Yeah, we got to
imagine.
find a common way to like say, no, we're talking about the same thing. What is our end objective? If our end objective is to keep children safe and prevent the spread of, we're without getting into like political theory, right? We're not going to stop 100% of everything, but how can we keep children safer? How can we deter criminals from acting in this direction? If that's our common goal, great. Now let's translate between, like, all right, here's what's technically feasible, technically possible. Here's how fast we can get it done. Here's how much it's going to cost. And how do we write that into the language faster than waiting for the next political administration to get hired in and want to make changes?
Yeah. Rachel, fascinating topic today. I think you're the really, we don't really talk about policy and people nearly enough on the show. So thank you for your insight
No,
today. I
you're
appreciate it.
welcome. Anytime, Darren. It's a pleasure to get back together on the podcast.
Thank you for listening to Embracing Digital Transformation today. If you enjoyed our podcast, give it 5 stars on your favorite podcasting site or YouTube channel. You can find out more information about Embracing Digital Transformation at embracingdigital.org. Until next time, go out and do something wonderful.